So now we come to the beginning of the reading for the week. And I do want you to take note of this title page for the part that we're studying over this session, The Edge of History. Because this is actually meant in a couple different ways. And again, remember, you should be taking notes as we do these little lessons here. Okay? So one way the edge of history is meant is we talked about in the last video about prehistory and history. And we talked about the development of writing as being the difference between the two. Okay, so Bauer is starting chronologically back as far as she can without engaging very much in prehistory. And so here we have the edge of history in one sense. Okay, so that's the first thing. So that's what you want to take down first. All right. Okay, so the second thing, though, is the border between mythology and history. Because, and that's another sense in which we think about the edge of history. Because history wants to, as historians, as students of history, we want to look at facts, interpret the facts, and come up with ideas or theories about the causes of history. Right? But when you go back this far in history, you end up dealing with sources that are mythological. And we see this in the first page, the first couple pages of our chapter, where it talks about King Alalim living for 36,000 years, or reigning for 36,000 years. And naturally, that doesn't really strike the ear as something that's highly plausible, right? So we at first glance, we can take that as mythology. And yet, looking at these documents, there must be a way to interpret them so that we still understand something again about the how and the why of ancient Sumerian culture, right? So that's what I would say. There's the two senses in which the edge of history should be taken, quote unquote, right? Is one, the chronological sense in which you have this edge between prehistory and history, and two, the edge between mythology and history. Okay. Now, so that's the first thing about this page. Let's go to the second thing now I want to talk about. So this is just a screenshot of the Kindle version of the book. And so we talked about this in class. What I'd like you to do is you're reading over your first reading assignment, that is the first chapter. I'd like you to I want you to read it one time without taking notes. Read once without taking notes. Don't underline it. Don't do anything to it. Just read it casually. It's not very long, so that shouldn't take you very long. Maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops. It might even take you less. Okay? All right, so that's the first task. Then what I want you to do, though, is I want you to start looking at it, taking some notes. And specifically, what I want you to do is to start with the who, the what, and the why of. I want you to start with the significant figures, where they are, etc. So if I'm reading this many thousands of years ago, the Sumerian, I want you to underline every term that you don't know what it is. And when I say no, I mean that in somewhat of a complete sense. If you just have a little bit of an understanding of it, that's not enough. So that might be on this page, many thousands of years ago, the Sumerian king Alulim. So here we don't know. We probably don't know either one of these terms. Ruled over Eridu, a walled city. Excuse me, a safe space carved out of the unpredictable and harsh river valley that the Romans would later name Mesopotamia. Right, and I assume that Mesopotamia is another word that you wouldn't know. Right? Alulim's rise to power marked the beginning of civilization, and his reign lasted for almost 30,000 years. By the way, we see the mythological I was mentioning before. The Sumerians, who lived in a world where the supernatural and the material had not yet been assigned to different sides of the isle, would not have choked over the last part of that sentence. On the other hand, they would have found Alulim's place in at the beginning of civilization extremely hard to swallow. In their own minds, the Sumerians had always been civilized. Alulim's kingship, recorded in the Sumerian king list, perhaps the oldest historical record in the world, descended from heaven and was already perfect when it arrived on earth. All right, so that's an example. You might have more or fewer terms than I've underlined here. Maybe you've been obsessed with Eridu for some time and you've done an extensive study about it. And if you already know what it is, that's fine. You don't have to underline it. But what I want you to do is to read once through the entire chapter, which is, let me double check, that's pages, bear with me, page 3 through page 9. So we're talking about 6 pages. So we're talking about pages 3 through 9 for tonight. Okay, so you read it once without taking notes. You just read it casually. It really, when I said it would take you tops 20 minutes, I'd be surprised at that. I mean, really, probably 10 minutes, okay? Then what I want you to do is read it a second time and underline every term that you don't know. All right, so that might be Alulim, that might be Eridu, that might be Mesopotamia, probably is. And err on the side of caution here. If you're not sure that you know it, underline it. And then we'll begin to talk about that tomorrow. Okay? Now, just to give you a sense here of what we're trying to do, let me add another page in. Again, I want plain paper. Okay. So, envision a house. And I like this metaphor. So here's the, ground, and I don't draw very well, so... and this is the foundation. I'm going to write that because it just looks like a rectangle. This is the rectangle. No, this is the foundation. And then when they build a house, they lay the foundation, and then they start by making a frame. Right, we're going to make our house very simple here, by the way, as you can imagine. Okay, there's going to be 3 rooms on the first floor. Okay, and maybe there's a second. So you have those boards, right? And so we have a foundation plus the frame. And then we add other things onto the frame, like drywall, siding, windows, etc. Obviously, we can go on quite a bit of time. Okay? So in history, the foundation is like the sort of stipulation we made in the earlier video about distinguishing prehistory and history. We need an intellectual foundation for what we're doing. And again, in this case, is that we want to know the how and the why of historical events. We want to know the causes. Okay? And so that, for us, that eliminated prehistory off it took it off the table. Okay? Then we want this frame, and the frame are these facts that you don't know, right? So some people might say, the who, the what, the where, and the when. Okay, so what I'm trying to have you do in underlining these terms is first getting the frame set up. And then what we're going to do is when you strive for greater understanding, then you're in this part here. Okay, the drywall, the siding, the windows, etc. The thing that's going to make your understanding of history unique. All right, so again, what you want to do, let me go back to the page before. You want to read pages 3 through 9 once without taking any notes. Don't underline it. Don't do anything like that. Just read it through straight. It should take you, I really think it should take you tops 10 minutes, but in any case, it won't be long, as you see, six pages. Then I want you to take notes in the way I described. Underline every term you don't know. And then we'll discuss that tomorrow. Okay? All right, so I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, and see you tomorrow.